Welcome back to Virtuous Woman TV. In today's video, we're going to take a little bit of a detour from our normal women empowerment / relationship topics. And I want to talk a little bit about this Young Thug situation that has been dominating the headlines all weekend long. So before we get started, please like the video, make sure that you are subscribed to this channel and that you have your notification bells on. So listen, unless you've been under a rock, then you pretty much know what's going on with Young Thug. And he's pretty much going against the world in regards to him being outed as a snitch, right? And I want to talk about why the importance of this. So Young Thug, and his group or record label or gang or whatever you want to call it, they were arrested a few years ago on a RICO charge. Gunna, which was one of the artists under his label, was the first to be released from jail, and it was allegedly from cooperating, or he took a plea deal or an Alford plea deal or something like that, in which he was tasked with admitting that YSL was a gang. Right now, YSL was a gang and not a record label. And so from there, he was allegedly branded a snitch. And the reason why is because they needed to qualify YSL as a gang in order to bring the snitch allegations against Young Thug. So basically, Young Thug's position is that, Gunna, you was the key to the whole RICO, because if you never admitted we was a gang, then they would not have been able to pursue or charge us with a RICO. So he was mad. He was big mad, and he labeled Gunna a snitch. And this pretty much took roots in the streets, and the intention was to dummy down his career. Now there's some discrepancies about why he really wanted to call him a rat, or why he really wanted to put the 2 on the 10 when it came to the snitch allegations against Gunna. And the first reason is that Gunna did not want to re-sign to Young Thug's record label. And Young Thug was obviously upset about this, right? So he's like, man, I put all this money into you. You were my investment. I even paid $50,000 to make one of your songs go #1, and I let you keep all the millions. I didn't tax you like these big ass record labels would do. I pretty much treated you like an independent artist, right? I didn't put you in no 360s. I didn't do shit to you. And then you turn around and tell me you don't want to sign with me or re-sign with me. That's a problem, because where's the loyalty? Where's the loyalty for what I put in and tried to develop within you, etc., right? Now, from Gunna's side, he may have been feeling like this ain't really the direction that I want to go, right? Maybe he saw something different for himself, or he saw a greater potential than what was being offered to him by Young Thug. I don't know, but the transparency wasn't there, because Young Thug seemed to have been dumbfounded about how he could make it so good for Gunna, and Gunna still not choose him, or choose his label. So that pretty much basically offended him. It kind of reminds me of what happened between Young Yo Gotti and Young Dolph, who we know was also just recently in the headlines because the guy who orchestrated his death was just found not guilty. But the myth or the legend is that Young Yo Gotti wanted Young Dolph to sign with him, and Young Dolph was like, "No, I'm good, bro. I'm gonna take this shit the independent route." And then he ended up signing with another label, but the other label pretty much allowed him to operate as an independent, meaning that he could keep his masters and he could retain creative control over all his products, all his projects, and that this record label would just take a percentage for their marketing efforts. So that was pretty much more of a better situation that he was looking for. Whatever reason was, Young Dolph felt entitled for Yo Gotti to tell this to him, and he felt backdoored by the fact that Young Dolph chose not to sign with him and not to tell him that he was signing with another record label, right? And I say entitled with all disrespect, because who the fuck are you, right? Why would he need to tell you? You're not his manager. You're just a person who was pursuing him, and he made a different choice, right? Now, Young Thug and Gunna definitely seem to have a deeper relationship. from the perspective of, again, young Thug made 100% investment into Gunna, right? And Gunna, listen, he may have fulfilled the obligations of that investment and decided, hey, okay, this is it. Like, this ain't no lifelong relationship, my guy. You here for a season, right? But you're not the reason. So anyway, so Young Thug, he kind of has this manipulative way about him, where if he has an issue with you, he wants everybody to have an issue with you, right? And that's his way of getting you ostracized or blackballed or having people not fuck with you, right? So he seems to have been going around to different people like 21 Savage and I'm sure others, his girlfriend Mariah the Scientist, and painting himself as a victim, right? Not necessarily a victim, but as a scolded friend or jilted lover. And he was pretty much given the impression that Gunna was doing him dirty or had done him bad. I don't know if his intention at the time was to turn people against Gunna, but it definitely was to plead his case about how Gunna had fucked up his ego, pretty much. He thought he was running something gang tight and that, you know, he wouldn't have somebody trying to escape the plantation hobbling on one leg like Kunta Kinte. He like, nigga, I made it good here. What more could you want? What more would you want? Right? He thought Gunna was his girlfriend and shit. But anyway, so his style is to talk about people, you know, behind their back. But really, I think that that's just him being overly emotional, because when people are overly emotional or emotionally dysregulated, they tend to overshare. And so he's basically leaking to these people like, man, this man is dirty. I did this, that, and the third for him, and da-da-da-da-da. And the more he wasn't getting people to buy into his emotion of the situation, then he started putting more and more on it. Yeah, and he is snitch. Yeah, and this, and this, and this. But it's really all in an attempt to get his feelings about the situation validated, right? Which is that, nigga, like, how could you do this to me, right? So that's just the type of person he is, right? He operates like a woman, right? And I don't say that in any disrespect, but women do have a tendency to have a pack mentality. And when they're upset in a friend group, they want everybody to feel the way that they feel. And they will increase the transgressions until most people do. And then they kick you out the circle. And then they turn back and around like Young Thug and say, oh, I would have forgave you, except everybody else already stopped fucking with you. So now it ain't really nothing I can do about it. So after Young Thug pleading his case and bleeding and leaking all over town about what Gunna did, and now Lil Durk ain't fucking with him, Future ain't fucking with him, Lil Baby ain't fucking with him, he turns around and says, oh, I would have kept fucking with him, but shit, it's too late now. So it sounds like Young Thug was just having a problem having a conversation with Gunna and saying, man, you hurt my feelings. You hurt my feelings. That's fucked up how I did all this shit for you, and you just gonna turn around and sign to somebody else. Like, that shit don't sit right with me. Like, I don't know how I feel about that. But I guess that would make Thug seem a little too vulnerable. Nobody wants to expose their weaknesses, especially when it comes to the ego, right? So he didn't want to say all that. You know, to Gunna. He didn't want to give Gunna that. And listen, maybe there was some jealousy there. Sometimes when people are jealous of you, they don't want to give you the pleasure of knowing that you have the power to hurt them, especially if they feel like they're supposed to be above you, or maybe they started out as above you and you're accelerating, or more people like you, or more people fuck with you. They don't want to give you the satisfaction of knowing that this is about hurt feelings, right? So now everybody's like listening to these tapes from Young Thug, and they're basically like, Young Thug is a snitch. You know, he was talking to detectives. He did a 2-hour interrogation. Gunna never did that. But Young Thug was just doing what he was doing with Mariah, with 21 Savage on his jail calls, running his fucking dick suckers. Now, he seems to be a red herring type of guy, where he likes to send people all around the issue and not really pinpoint the core of what the fuck is going on. And so from his perspective, he like, I ain't snitched shit. I talked around the issue. I talked around what was going on. I painted a mood to send people in the opposite directions, but I didn't really say what the issue was. So in his mind, I didn't snitch. In his mind, his 2-hour interrogation was not about him telling, but about him sending red herrings. But if you listen to the conversation with him and his girlfriend and 21 Savage, it could be the same thing, right? It's him painting a mood and sending them up one train of thought and letting that play out in their actions or their loyalties or their thoughts about the situation, while masking the core of what his issue was, right? Which is that his ego was fucking bruised. That's it, and that's all. Which is that he gave the best of himself to Gunna, and Gunna rejected him. And I don't feel like he wanted to be vulnerable enough to say that, because for one, that brings the conversation around to empathy and the soothing of young Thug, when really he wanted action. He wanted people to do something adverse or feel something adverse about Gunna. He didn't want his hand held through his feelings. You know what I mean? He wanted revenge. It's giving Scorpio, even though I know he's a Leo. I know it's some Scorpio up in there somewhere. You ain't gonna tell me otherwise, right? And that was his way of exacting revenge against Gunna, right? So now here comes all the bloggers, and especially the white bloggers, right? The Trap Laura Rosses and the No Jumpers. Oh my God, they're getting on my nerves because not because of what they're doing, but because they're just colonizing this whole blogging scene, right? And the reality is that there is no black answer to a platform like No Jumper or a platform like Trap Laura Ross. So yeah, a lot of black people are on the sidelines watching these content creators be able to create narratives or to instigate fights or to depict a scene in which a narrative is sold and consumed. We got to remember, they're in it for the business of it. They don't care about the reality. Remember, like I said in my other video, it's black people who believe everything they see and hear, who don't have the wherewithal to know the real from the fake, to be so easily impressionable. And again, it comes down to the quality of work we produce. You know, YouTube said recently that they're not giving a lot of shine to low effort uploads, and that includes videos like mine, right, where we're just talking and putting the overlays. No, they want to see these drawn out documentaries. They want to pay for content like that, but the danger is that this content controls a lot of the narratives, right? Now listen, they commingle with the black people. We know that No Jumper has kind of created a sector for the Cali gangbanging, right? And then he has features and feature hosts like Poetic Flacco and Whack 100. Now, Poetic Flacco, I've known him from way back in the day. I don't know if he was Manosphere or what he was, but Poetic Flacco has definitely put in the work and persevered through this game and turned himself into a multimillionaire off of commentary. Listen, the man said he ain't clearing no less than $50,000 a month. And that's not just a one-time thing. That's consistently over the last 2 years. And he's not in some type of industry that's ever going to die, like how the Manosphere did, right? So he's doing really well for himself. But at the same time, he's still wedged into a role, in my opinion, where he's like Steven from Django, right? He recently got into it with the guy who orchestrated the death of Young Dolph. And Flacco was talking greasy, okay? Flacco, who's not from LA, doesn't have any connections, not a street dude, not a gangbanger. I don't even know if he's American. I think he's Caribbean or something like that. He was going in like, fuck you niggas, like ain't nobody finna do shit to me. You broke ass niggas ain't shit. Run up, shut up, do something, put up, shut up, talking big shit. But the reason is that he cracked the code. He cracked the code, which is a lot of what squares are doing in relationship to street dudes. The squares are cracking the code and knowing that, you know, a lot of street dudes are emotional, are easy to manipulate, don't have much, and they're using this to their advantage. So Flacco, he's in a position to talk all this shit because he's been around enough street dudes to know that they need something. Money, for one, and for two, they snitch, and for three, they're scared of jail. So Flacco, weaponized with all this knowing on his side, is like, fuck y'all niggas. Like, you're too scared to go to jail. You ain't got enough money to put a hit out on me. and I can manipulate you guys. So there's no respect there anymore. So yeah, he's talking his shit back, right? Because he's caught on to that. The number one power that street dudes has is the gaslighting, is the verbal intimidation, is the making themselves to believe by way of their gang affiliations that they're harder than what they are. And he's like, the reality is that most of you niggas are broke, dusty, and scary. And therefore, I'm not finna run around and tuck my tail. But at the same time, we also got to realize that he's doing this because of his proximity to No Jumper. That's why I said he's like Steven from Django. And No Jumper is like Candy. I think that's the plantation owner's name. And I'm not saying this in any corny way, because we've all noticed that him and Vlad are cultural vultures and all shit like that. But it's a little bit deeper than that. If you ask me, I'll tell you No Jumper is the feds, right? I honestly just got a feeling about that when it came to the whole Big U indictment. Big U is another person who has been charged with a RICO or some Fed type shit in Los Angeles. And a lot of that was surrounding bloggers and the No Jumper show. And so basically he went down, right? And there was this big thing called check-in. For anybody who wanted to operate and do business in Los Angeles, they had to check in with Big U and basically get taxed, mafia style or mob style. And eventually he got told on. Now they act like they discovered this shit through content and through podcasts on places like No Jumper, but in reality, I think that No Jumper told. I think Big U tried to pull that shit with No Jumper. Like, nigga, you gotta check in and do business here. You gotta hit me off with some cash if you want to keep talking to these bangers, or we gonna fuck you up. Another one of the people who may have snitched, I think, is Shaquille O'Neal. Even though they say Shaquille O'Neal actually was checking in. He was paying the LA gangbangers. Chris Brown was checking in. He was paying the LA gangbangers, right? But I don't think that shit went unchecked. I just think that he was able to maneuver it so that his name was not brought up, because he has enough money to protect himself. But definitely they dropped a dime on it. And I think the No Jumper show and the presence of all of those gang members in one place talking shit was just kind of like a mirage to pretend that that's the reason why Big U and all these people are being indicted, when really they're being indicted because No Jumper and Shaquille O'Neal and people like that have snitched. But again, they can't keep the game going if they're exposed as snitches. So what they do is they manipulate and manufacture conversations between all these street dudes who are running their mouths, and then they can look and say, oh nah, nobody snitched. Shit, y'all told on yourselves. Y'all running your mouths too much. And it's like, nah, a lot of people run their mouths. There's characters, there's actors. People say all kind of shit on the internet all day and they're not in jail. You know what I mean? So no, it's more than that, right? Now I said that to say that this whole check-in strategy from Big U, to me, is being done block style now, and with the new Big U being Whack 100. And instead of there and No Jumper too, and Poetic Flacco too, right? Just Cali in general. And instead of it being a when you touch down in LA, you need to check in, it's more so either you gonna let us know what's going on or pay us for, or we running narratives on you. And that's pretty much the same thing that Big U was doing. So No Jumper, Whack 100, Poetic Flacco, all of them are the blogging versions of Big U. That state, either you gonna give us the story, you gonna give us the exclusive, you gonna give us the interview, or we gonna run content on you. We gonna run content, we gonna run the narrative, and we gonna control the way people view you in this situation. So they had absolute control over the mood behind what Young Thug did. They had the ability to spin the narrative like, nah, this ain't snitching, or even with Gunna. And they had the ability to put it on like, man, this nigga snitching hard. Because we know that any situation can be looked at in multiple ways. And depending on whether or not a nigga checked in or paid in or gave the interview was determining which way this story was going to spin for Young Thug. So it's not really even about Young Thug snitching. If you have any type of intuition and you listen to these phone calls, you can see what Young Thug is doing, which is he's just trying to run shit, but he's using sympathy, victimhood, and also villainhood. But in actuality, it's all about hurt feelings. It's about somebody who's overly loyal to the people around them and doesn't feel a level of reciprocity and wants something to happen to people because of that. It doesn't have anything to do with him snitching, but because he didn't check in, because he didn't give Wack 100 and Flacco and all of them the right to the story or the perception, they ran content on him. And that includes No Jumper, and that includes Trap Lord Ross, and all of them are in on it, just following a leader to create this overall picture of Young Thug as a snitch because he didn't check in. And I think that's why I'm so heavily against the so-called propaganda or the machine or the pack mentality, because people are losing the right to think and intuit things for themselves. A lot of people doing commentary on Young Thug don't even understand what snitching is about, don't understand street culture, doesn't understand the mind and motives of nigga, yet they got an opinion. Oh, you a snitch, you a snitch, you a snitch on what? He made it perfectly clear what his intentions was. Now, yeah, Young Thug is in his feelings. His ego is out of control. Yeah, he's a little childish and immature, but listen, the depiction of him as a snitch, none of that came from what he actually did. It's all coming from niggas who are running content, right? And niggas who feel at liberty to do that because of their proximity to the colonizer, No Jumper. They know No Jumper is the feds. They know he's the police, and they feel protected in their role in creating content against powerful people with money to touch them, or gangbangers, or white people. They got an inborn sense of protection, right? They getting away with saying and doing anything. They snitching and exposing all over the internet, and you'll be damned if a nigga run up and threaten any of them. You don't hear Trap Lord Ross and 1090 Jake and Adam 22. You don't hear any of them being threatened or exposed as snitches and having their reputations ruined. For them, the show goes on. They just keep pitting us against each other, putting us in fucked up positions, and behind the scenes, they're pulling all the strings. And the black people like Wack 100 and Poetic Flacco, they just using that proximity to them to do the same thing and get a piece of the pie. And it's working well for them. It's giving them a sense of power, which is stroking their ego. They're well-paid slaves, and we know that's gonna go well. And I don't say nothing against Flacco. I like Flacco for what he is, right? He's a cool dude. He just is who he is. A lot of people like Flacco. Flacco is funny. He's intelligent, but at the end of the day, he's still like goddamn Samuel L. Jackson on Django. He is. Like, let's be honest. Right? But at the end of the day, they're just running narratives. They're running narratives on Young Thug because he ain't pay up and he ain't pull in and he didn't put in to make him stop or to make him not. And that's all there is to it. They control the perception because people are weak and feeble-minded, and they want to be on one accord when it comes to how people are thinking, right? Anyways, I think we should be alert, right? Take a look at things from other perspectives. So I wanted to put mine out there. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Feel free to sound off in those comments, but don't forget to check me out on Etsy, okay? Man, woman, and child, 8 to 80. Don't nobody want no rough and dry feet. So invest in some of my moisturizing foot balm. Let me serve you, because that's what I like to do, okay? But until then, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you on the next one. Peace!